general is that each candidate will get a 2-minute opening statement, followed by a Q&A session and a 3-minute closing statement. Most questions well, when I wrote this, most questions have been received by email. However, many of you submitted questions today. We weren't able to keep them all. There were a lot of duplicate questions, which we got rid of, and there were a few questions that we really couldn't understand. So hopefully we will cover everything that you all had questions on. In general, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. There will be no rebuttals. Candidates can use their closing statement to rebut any issue. By coin toss, Congressman Zeldin has been chosen to go first. So you get 2 minutes for your opening statement. Yes?
Can I make a motion to say the pledge of allegiance?
Yeah, good.
You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got 2 minutes.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, it's great to be with all the residents of Sound Beach. Thank you to the Sound Beach Civic Association for hosting and for moderating. My name is Lee Zeldin. I was born and raised on Long Island. Now my wife Diane and I are raising here in Brookhaven our beautiful twin daughters, Michaela and Ariana. I grew up here, William Floyd, high school, college, law school up in Albany, where I did Army ROTC. I then spent 4 years on active duty in the Army. I've been serving in the reserves for 9 years. I spent some time as a military magistrate, a prosecutor. I was a military intelligence officer. I spent some time as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division. I then served in the New York State Senate. While I was there, I successfully led the fight to repeal the MTA payroll tax for 80% of employers. I co-sponsored the nation's strongest property tax cap, reduced middle-income tax rates to the lowest level in 60 years in New York State. I created the PFC Joseph Dwyer program for our veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I wrote the law for our military families to protect them at military burials. I was recently elected to Congress in 2014. I've been focusing on my new era of American Strength agenda to protect America's security at home and abroad, to help grow our economy, create more good-paying private sector jobs, to fight for our veterans and first responders, to improve the quality of education in our schools, repair our nation's infrastructure, to improve healthcare in America, and safeguard our environment. I've been leveraging my position in the majority as a freshman to get a lot of my proposals passed, working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I look forward to talking about that over the course of this debate. I'm passionate about the need to secure our country and grow our economy. There's a lot of hard work that's still ahead for not just our community, but for our entire nation. I ask for your support on November 8th, and thank you all for being here.
Hi and good evening, everyone. I'm Anna Fraunholst, and I want to thank the organizers and everyone who's come out for doing this tonight. This is a very important part of the election process, an opportunity for us to answer your questions and for you to get to know us. I'm Anna Fraunholst, and I am here and running for Congress because we are currently in the hands of the single most ineffective and dysfunctional Congress in the history of Congress. 89% of Americans think that Congress is dysfunctional. I've raised 4 kids right here in District 1, New York. I have built and run social service and educational organizations. And I got elected to the town board. And I led the way on curing deficits, calling for audits, cutting wasteful spending, protecting taxpayer dollars, getting the AAA bond rating, and not raising taxes on middle-class families. This is the kind of representation that we need in Congress, and someone who will reach across the aisles and solve the problems that are facing us today. We are currently in the hands of a Congress, and Mr. Zeldin is part of that, that will not address the issues around protecting Social Security and Medicare, that will not address the issues around the Affordable Care Act and what is not working with it, that will not address issues around immigration reform, that will not address the issues around gun safety. Yet 80 to 90% of residents want to see common sense gun safety laws. They want to see a Congress that is reaching across the aisle and getting the job done. That's what I did on the town board, and that's what I will do in Congress for all of you and protect hardworking middle-class taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay, the first question is for Ms. Roan-Holtz. Do you believe that Hillary Clinton is trustworthy?
I want to talk about District 1, New York. I want to talk about who we are electing in District 1, New York. I'm letting the American people decide who they're voting for on the presidential level. And I'd like to talk about my own trustworthiness because that is what should matter to people in District 1, New York. I got elected 5 times, 4 times on the town board. My 3 re-elections as supervisor, I got elected by 60-40 margins in a town that has a much larger percentage of Republican voters than anything else. You can't get those kind of numbers if you didn't get the job done and people didn't trust you to represent them and do it well. To me, that is what should matter to District 1 voters. Then what they do at the polls on November 8th on the presidential level, that is up to them. But I can tell you that I will not vote for a sexual predator that brags about being a sexual predator. And that's Mr. Trump.
Okay, the next question is for Congressman Zeldin. Donald Trump has made a series of statements that can be construed as sexist and racist. But even more disturbing are his statements that because he is famous and people love him, he can do or say anything. Given that you're a Trump supporter, would you care to tell us what makes all this okay?
It's not okay. And the short answer to the last question is no. And after what we've happened over the course of the last few days in the debate with regards to the video that did come out, just before it came out, we had our first debate. This is our second debate. At our first debate, my opponent was asked, do you find Hillary Clinton to be honest and trustworthy? And she gave a similar answer than what you just gave just now. Just now you asked a similar question, do you find her to be trustworthy? And again, she won't answer the question, but she did spend the entire weekend with 5 tweets on Twitter and 3 posts on Facebook and sending out emails, commentary on the presidential race, nothing about the substantive issues that I'm here and everyone's here to talk about. To answer your question, I'm not going to defend it. It's indefensible and it's wrong. But I'm glad that you asked the question, and it's important when you do ask these questions that you get honest answers. And hopefully my opponent chooses to revisit that last question you just asked, because that's the second time that she's dodged that since Thursday.
Remember, everyone, I said no clapping, no booing, nothing. You please do not respond to the candidates until the end of the meeting. Okay, this is just a yes/no question. One of the cornerstones of the American political system, with all its faults, has been the peaceful transfer of power. Will both of you promise to work in good faith with whoever wins the presidential election? Ms. Ronan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we will hold you to this. Okay, the next question is for Congressman Zeldin. It's for both of you, but Congressman Zeldin, you'll go first. What will you do to protect our environment while creating good-paying jobs and educational opportunities in Suffolk County by investing in new technologies that will take us off our dependence on fossil fuels?
That's awesome. That's a 4-part question. I got 2 minutes. I'm going to try to get this all in. I've been working hard on a number of efforts to protect our environment. One, I got 2 of my proposals passed to save Plum Island. What I'd like to see with Plum Island, instead of selling it to the highest bidder, is to continue to use the research infrastructure for a research mission. Right now, there are good paying jobs. I would like to see that continue, and preserving the rest of Plum Island. 90% of it is undeveloped. When you visit it, it feels like you're visiting a place thousands of miles away from home. It's beautiful, and there should also be some amount of public access. We also need to clean up the Long Island Sound. Right now, the EPA is considering, there's a decision in place to phase out the eastern dump sites. Connecticut's dredge waste oil is dumped into Long Island Sound. That's wrong. The EPA should continue to phase out the eastern dump sites. Currently on the western dump sites, the plan is to phase it out within 30 years. That should be reduced to 10 years. Secured $26.5 million for the National Estuary Program. We have 2 estuaries in this district. The first congressional district is very unique because we are almost completely surrounded by water. Protecting our environment is very important with local issues. That's why I mentioned Plum Island, Long Island Sound, Peconic Estuary. These are all really important efforts. We also need to rebuild our South Shore, which was devastated due to Superstorm Sandy. When I came into office, the Fire Island to Montauk Point plan, the FIM plan, was funded at about $600 million, and we got that increased. Now it's at $1.16 billion. We also have in our district, Brookhaven National Lab, Stony Brook. We have worked on reversing proposed funding cuts to RBE and other investment into Brookhaven National Lab, into Stony Brook, where they are doing a really important alternative energy mission. There may be an opportunity in Plum Island or elsewhere at the lab or at Stony Brook to go further to be able to find the next great thing to get off our reliance on fossil fuels and pursue alternative energies.
It's a great question and a very important one for District 1 New York. And let me start by saying that Newsday endorsed me as a big thinker on the environment in my last race for supervisor because of the work that I had done and the leadership that I had provided on the environment. It's a front and center question. Now, my opponent will not deny climate change. And we are in the throes of a climate change that every scientist worth their salt has established. And for someone like myself, who for 8 years presided over a budget, a municipal budget, and 6 out of my years as town supervisor, we dealt with 5 federally named storms. So I know firsthand what the cost to you as taxpayers and to us as local municipalities is if we do not deal with the effects of climate change. So, what did we do in Southampton? We started something called the Solarized Southampton, which is a non-fossil fuel, obviously, trying to get off of the dependence on LIPA. My opponent voted to allow dirty fuel-burning plants to not get regulated. Then we talk about the jobs. You talked about that. Those are the kinds of programs we need all over. So I pitched a program to the Governor's Regional Economic Council and then to the governor, which created the New York State Clean Water Technology Center at Stony Brook University. It stands to be one of the biggest job creators right here in District 1, New York, and it is dealing with the development of technology to deal with the nitrogen loading that is today threatening both our ground and our surface waters. The Long Island Sound dumping is something where all Mr. Zeldin did was sign on to a letter where he is our conduit in federal government to get the Army Corps to do what we needed to do. That's not sufficient.
Okay, both of you touched on the recent EPA proposal to designate new permanent sites for open water disposal of dredged material off the coast of eastern Long Island. I'd like both of you to sort of expand on that a little bit as far as where we are, where we hope to be, and what you hope to do to stop this. Ms. Throneholz, you'll go first.
Very important question. And, you know, our local papers write about it all the time. And here we are, funding through taxpayer dollars a dredging program to take the spoils that is currently mostly on the Connecticut side and preventing our waterways from being open enough to a lot of the commercial vessels coming and going. But what is in those spoils is at question here. And there's every reason to believe that they are extremely toxic. And that is what we have been advocating for, is that these spoils be pulled up, that they be tested, and if they are toxic, that they not be put back in. And most of the sites to dump back in are on the Long Island side of the Sound. Now, my opponent has voted consistently to defund and deregulate the EPA. Meanwhile, the EPA is being asked to do their job here. You can't have it both ways. Because one of the things they're talking about is that they do not have the funding to do this right. So what did the state legislature do and the governor? They wrote a letter to the Army Corps and the EPA demanding that all the things I just talked about happen. Mr. Zeldin happily sat down next to them and signed that letter. Again, he is our representative in the federal government. He is the person that can go to the Army Corps and the EPA and demand that they do this right and make sure that these toxins are not dumped back into the Sound, that these spoils are dealt with properly, and has fallen down on that job. Meanwhile, all of us here, particularly on the Long Island side of the Sound, stand to see these spoils go right back into our waters, where we are spending millions of dollars on the other side trying to clean up the Long Island Sound. That's poor representation.
Okay, so for a little more of the rest of the story, beyond signing a letter one day, we actually got the EPA to phase out the eastern dump sites. So there are dump sites all throughout the Long Island Sound, and the eastern dump sites get phased out in December. That is way beyond just a letter. As a matter of fact, what we're advocating for is for the EPA to continue to do that with regards to the eastern dump sites. Now, there are people on the western Long Island Sound who are trying to, and I support their efforts, to reduce from 30 years to 10 years the phase out of open water dumping in the Long Island Sound. But that is the rest of the story. You want to get answers to questions that are important to you. There are a lot of important issues facing our local community and our country. How nice would it be if you're able to come to these debates and time was spent answering questions honestly, truthfully, and completely, as opposed to just trying to score cheap political shots out of your own selfish gain to gain votes because you really, really, really want to make yourself a congresswoman. What's important is when you're here and you're asked a question, that you're able to fill in the full story. So what we were able to successfully do is that as of right now, the eastern dump sites get phased out in December. And by the way, my opponent who spoke about her Newsday endorsement in her last race, it's important to note that she wasn't running against anyone. She almost lost to a write-in candidate, but she got endorsed against no one. So I don't know how much worth that is to be endorsed against a write-in candidate. Additionally, I have said over and over, and it just happened today, where we're in the same room talking about our changing climate. And she heard me, again, as it's been in print, about how I've spoken about how our climate is changing. Yet, it's a really good talking point. And it polls really, really well to come here and say to you, whatever this means, I will not deny, if I could quote her correctly for what she just said, our climate is changing. But you know what would be more helpful? Rather than just trying to fling off attacks because they poll well, we spend our time talking about how we can be good stewards of the environment. For our land, conservation of our land, for our water, and for our air.
We're going to stay with the environment. The next question is a yes/no question, but the one that will follow will be related. Do you support the EPA's Clean Power Plan, touted as a step in reducing carbon pollution from power plants? Ms. Thronholz?
I do.
I don't, because it will double our electric rates on Long Island.
You'll get a chance to expand on that. The next question, and you'll take this first, Congressman Zeldin. While politicians and special interests debate whether or not climate change is real, scientists believe that the perils of doing nothing to reduce heat-trapping carbon in the atmosphere is one of the leading causes of climate change. Where do you stand on this, and what do you think needs to be done to address it?
Well, I'm a member of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus to bring together conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats. Because the fact is, we all want to be good stewards of our environment. And we just had a chance to talk about a whole lot of different issues. But if you want to go further and talk about the air, first off, the Clean Power Rule, which is done by the EPA through the executive branch, going around Congress, is a proposal that will double our rates here on Long Island. That alone is unacceptable, well, actually on many different levels. But to go a little bit further, here on Long Island, we need to upgrade our infrastructure. I've been saying this for years. That we on Long Island, you look at the Caithness plant right now that is more environmentally friendly and economically friendly, where meanwhile you have all these outdated power plants all across Long Island that are operating primarily because you have local districts, school districts, relying on the money to help pay property taxes. And there are jobs, there are a lot of jobs that are associated with it. You should be repowering a place like Port Jefferson.